Hello world of beautiful humans. I would like to talk to you today about empathy, adaptability, resilience, and how we can help each other and our own selves actually adapt in these strange and weird times of crisis, but it's the same all around because we're always changing. People always talk about humans don't change, people don't change, I don't like change, people fear change. Well, the point is we're always changing and we're always adapting or not adapting and developing resilience or not developing resilience, having empathy or not having empathy, but everything is changing all the time. The question is, how are we able to cope with it? And of course, I'll always use a story because I love telling stories, and we all love hearing stories. That brings all this into relevance. That actually just occurred yesterday, which triggered me to do this video here, and includes a learning from my own father before he passed away, obviously many years ago now. So the story with empathy, let me first of all define it for you as I would like to define it, so that we can make sure that we're talking about the same thing, and you can have your own definition of empathy in your own mind, of course. In my book 40 Leadership, I wrote the following, so I'll just read it because that's exactly how I defined it. Actually, I'll define resilience first as how I wrote it here. So resilience is not toughness, but rather pliability. Being able to adapt and reform when situations change without losing focus is critical to being a true leader. Adapting to people's changing needs, the changing world, and the emotional rides we take through our journey in time requires flexibility that does not bow or fall prey to reactive behavior. That's how I defined resilience, and how I define it again. I don't need to change that at all. And it's something that we develop, we evolve into resilience. Now, empathy, which we should be showing more and more of towards our own selves, having mercy and fairness towards our own selves, as well as mercy and fairness upon others, is by showing empathy. And what does empathy mean compared to sympathy or just feeling sorry for someone or any of that? This is how I defined it in the book, like I said. Have empathy instead of sympathy. Feel with them rather than sorry for them. Sympathy ingrains poor me feelings and evokes a negative view of life. Empathy evolves care and engages one clear goal. How can I help make it better for you? That is being solution-oriented, and it gives hope. Now, as we all know, we all adapt to change. Like we said before, change is inevitable. The way we adapt to it is variable because we're all different, and we're all different to our own selves at different parts of our time on this earth. I'm not the same as I was 10 years ago, and I don't expect, I hope not, I'll be the same in 10 years. I hope I'll be more resilient and more adaptable and more able to adapt, because that's natural selection in science, what we call natural selection. Well, this is intentional natural selection. We could easily say, hey, let natural selection take its effect and kill the weaker ones or whatever, or do what humans should be doing more of, and we are doing in a way, that is have empathy and help the collective evolve intentionally. So guide natural selection towards our intentional evolution together, though, intentionally, rather than just natural as in we succumb to it. Of course, there are variations to that where people have taken it to other extremes and gone into eugenics and natural selection by intentional human activity, killing the other ones, the non-pure race, and all these things happen all over Europe and the United States and Germany, of course, and all these places. Anyway, let's not go there. That's not. I don't want to talk about the negatives. I want to talk about the positives. So where did this come into play through the story that triggered this whole thing in my mind was yesterday. I went shopping to the supermarket during this lockdown. Of course, lines everywhere. It was closed on Friday, Easter Friday, closed on Sunday as well today. So yesterday was Saturday, the middle day, extremely busy. Body long lines, 1.5 to 2 meters between every person and the other. It was just ridiculous. But anyway, I just did it, took it in stride, had to do it, done. Now, the reason I went is because Marta sent me, because I don't like going to supermarkets normally. I'm not the person who does the shopping at home. I love shopping. I like shoes, I like clothes, love technology, love all that stuff, but not food shopping. Just never been my thing. I don't go to supermarkets at all unless I really have to. On the other hand, Marta enjoyed it. My wife enjoys going to supermarkets and doing the shopping, and sometimes she goes two, three times a week because she just likes it, normally. Now, in a time of crisis like this, with all these lines and all these things, not that I enjoy it now, but I just don't mind doing it. Fine, she asked me to do it 3 times in the last 2 weeks, so I did it. she did not want to go to the supermarket anymore. She had this aversion, this sudden aversion to going to supermarkets. Because the first day of the lockdown, she did go, and she just came back totally distressed from it. So yesterday we were talking about something else with my daughter, with Noor, and I asked her after I came back, I said, I was complaining about the lines and all these things, and I said, why don't you go anymore? And she said, well, that's the point. I can't stand the lines because it reminds me of the communist days in Czechoslovakia, where she grew up during the 70s and 80s. It was still communism, obviously, and that's when she was a child. And then in the 90s, when we met, not communism anymore. However, she grew up as a child during communism as the eldest girl, basically. Her mom used to send her usually to buy groceries, and they would have to stand in line and ask for the stuff from the counter, and she used to hate that. So now, this shift here, from the 90s onwards, what happened in Czech with all the changes, and then of course us moving to New Zealand after that in the late 90s, she started to enjoy shopping because she didn't like what was happening before, and she found another better way of doing it that she enjoyed. However, now with this lockdown and these lines, it reminded her emotionally of that feeling. Although it's not the same, but it's so similar. It's all about emotions. Nothing's the same. It's our emotion, our memory, our remembrance of what we felt about a thing, good or bad, that when that gets triggered, we go back into that emotion, and then it changes our state, and we react to that. That reminded her of that time period. Therefore, she suddenly has an aversion again to go to supermarkets. So it's not about the supermarket, or about shopping, or about food, or about any of that. It's about the associations, the neuro associations of what does it feel like now compared to what I associated with as pain or pleasure in my past, especially as a child, because those are the hardest emotional experiences to get over. They stay with you for life. What you've gone through as a child when you had no choice, basically. As an adult, you have a choice. You can change those adaptations, neuro associations, and adapt differently, or you can find it troublesome to adapt to that, obviously. So what that brought to my mind, it was like, oh my God, I never asked her this question. I never asked her, how does it feel going through all this? I just was laughing, almost joking, like, what the hell happened to you? Like, you don't like supermarkets suddenly? And it's only when she said that, when she exposed what the problem is to her emotionally, that I realized that, oh, this is the time to show empathy. This is the time for me to understand and say, I was going because I was told to go, like any good husband will. Didn't argue that. I can't say that was out of empathy. I just went because I was told to. However, when I heard that, I was like, this is the time to trigger that empathetic emotion. Like, oh, therefore, for the next few weeks until this lockdown is over, I will never ask you to go to the supermarket again. I will take the initiative to go because I know how it makes you feel, and I can help by taking away that stress of having it done by you, basically, and doing it myself. At the same time, obviously, Noor was there, and Noor is studying psychology now, and she's always been into coaching and psychology and mentoring and kids line and all these things. So we changed the conversation, carried on with the conversation about empathy in general, and how stories like this, that I didn't experience that when I was growing up as a child. I did not experience poverty or homelessness or lack. We were not rich, but we were a normal middle-class family, and everything was fine to us in our perception. However, I had to finish the story with what I was telling Noor about my dad, because although he was okay when we were growing up in Abu Dhabi, and then when we moved to New Zealand, his power to adapt and build resilience in the face of major changes in his life were always also hindered by his childhood, which was a childhood of poverty. His mother died while he was really young. He was brought up by his aunt, who he called mum, and his grandmother, and his father's new wife, and his new siblings after that became, obviously they're still his siblings, but his new mum was his aunt, basically, while his real aunt was his mum. So anyway, long story short, brought up in poverty initially, mother died early, brought up by different people. So when we were little, and that's not the story of my mother, actually, which is another extreme on the other side, when we were growing up, I could never understand why every time we said, Dad, we want new shoes, we want new this, me and my sister, we want this, we want that, he would always step back. Not that he ever lacked the ability or the intent to look after us, of course. To the contrary, it was just his own emotional trigger that, oh, Why do you want a new one? Back in my days, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, I didn't have that. You have all these shoes, you have all this. His first response was always taken back and saying, back in my days, da 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 da. And of course, we hated it as kids, like, oh, come on, dad. And so we'd go to mom. Oh, yeah, mom always, yeah, go take somebody and go buy shoes or whatever. Different story. So we always knew how to, like all kids do, they learn how to play the parents against each other. Obviously, I never analyzed it this way before, but later on in life, and especially when we came to New Zealand, he got sick and he got depressed. And even at that time, I could not understand why he couldn't adapt. Why was he unable to cope with all these things and led to his depression and all these things. I realized that that's the story there. It's his childhood and his preconditioning, even though he changed his life. He very well educated, master's degree in the UK, this and that and everything else, and well-paid profession, all these things, but still he never sought redemption for what he felt as a child, and therefore, for example, as he was very well positioned where he was working in Abu Dhabi, but he never wanted or accepted, actually, because we've been told that he was offered that, he never accepted promotions because he was too scared to step out of his own perceived glass roof, basically. I was brought up in poverty. What I have now is much more than what I ever had before. I don't want anymore. I can't handle it anymore. It's a mental state, basically. Understanding that, this is what I want to say now, understanding that at any point in life of how this other person in front of you, whether it's your father, your mother, your child, your husband, your wife, or the people you care for, the people you serve, the people you work with, humans, just understanding other humans, where they come from, why they act the way they act, why they react the way they react, why they can adapt at times and then disadapt at other times. Literally change, there's the change right there. Change your adaptability, build resilience more easily or less easily. What is all that about? It's all about understanding them with the intent and empathy, showing the empathy with the intent of saying, what you're feeling right now is probably based on some preconditioning, pre-exposure, pre-experiences that you've had in the past. How can I help you change that? How can I help you make it better? If I can. And if I can't, at least just listen. Be a good listener, be a good advisor if you can, take away the strain from them until they can adapt, and do that for yourself, first of all. Like I said before, I could not understand how anybody could be in depression, when my father was really ill and he was very depressed for a whole year, I was really angry at times, and at times I was feeling just confused. What's going on in him? Why can't he adapt? Why can't he get out of it? I could not understand that at all until I experienced my own downfall and my own severe depression and had to relearn. Learn and understand how he felt, but also and how other people feel in that situation. And when everything is dark, when you lose purpose for life, when you lose any intent of living, because it doesn't matter really anymore, nothing that used to bring you joy anymore, nothing that hurts you anymore, it just doesn't matter, nothing matters. So learning and experiencing that and feeling that and knowing how that feels, as well as overcoming it, more importantly, taught me calmness, how to calm down, how to have empathy for my own self, understanding my own self better, as well as others. It taught me how to intentionally develop resilience, not just body resilience as we talk about in all the videos, and immune system, developing your immune system, viruses, whatever. It's mental resilience, it's heart resilience, it's soul resilience, to be able to adapt more, because everything is changing anyway, we are changing as well, but let's make it an intentional, empathetic, merciful process of adaptability and empathy. Thank you. Until I see you next time, always aim to look better, feel better, and be better. Take care.